I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, a bipartisan push. The head of the Secret Service resigns following the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. A former Secret Service agent reacts. Hitting the trail. Kamala Harris makes her first appearance as the likely Democratic nominee for president. No longer available. Reaction after China's communist government restricts access to a popular Catholic prayer app. Plus, truth and beauty. A report from Rome on a unique project regarding Christian identity. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Bridget of Sweden. Our top story tonight, the fallout was quick. The director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheatle, resigned today following demands from lawmakers to step down. This after the recent assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric.
Good evening, Tracy. The heat was on the Secret Service director to leave her post after she failed to provide lawmakers with answers at a congressional hearing yesterday. There were calls from both sides for her to step down. Eventually, Kimberly Cheatle turned in her resignation today.
I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats. Now we have to pick up the pieces. We have to rebuild the American people's faith and trust in the Secret Service as an agency.
Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, who led Monday's hearing with Director Cheatle, released a statement that said in part, quote, "The Oversight Committee's hearing resulted in Director Cheatle's resignation. There will be more accountability to come. We need a full review of how these security failures happen so that we can prevent them going forward." Democrats agree.
Well, I'm glad she did. I mean, it's just not tenable for her to continue in that role because she's lost the confidence of too many Americans. And I hope that President Biden will appoint someone with an impeccable background who's not political, who can restore confidence in that agency.
Moving forward, Speaker Johnson announced he is setting up a 13-member bipartisan commission to investigate the security failures at the Trump rally.
They'll have three primary responsibilities. We have to get the answers, of course, about what happened. We need to make sure that accountability is ensured to the American people, and then we need to prevent anything like this from ever happening again.
Meanwhile, at a Homeland Security hearing today with Pennsylvania law enforcement, officers said the Secret Service gave them minimal security duties like traffic control for the rally, and add they were aware of the suspect Thomas Matthew Crooks prior to former President Trump taking the stage.
How did they relay it to Secret Service?
I believe that they verbally turned and said in the command post, this is information that I just received. And then in follow up to that, as directed from the interview that I was briefed on, that was forwarded by text as requested by the Secret Service.
Pennsylvania authorities add the communication between agencies could have been better, and no drones by law enforcement were ever used to secure the area. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas has already named former Deputy Director Ronald Rowe Jr., a 24-year veteran of the Secret Service, as the new acting director. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Okay, for analysis, let's bring in Paul Eckloff, a 23-year veteran of the Secret Service who provided detail for Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. Paul, great to have you back on. A lot has transpired since the last time we talked, including the big announcement this morning that Director Cheatle was resigned, and as mentioned, an acting director is now in place. Your reaction to all this?
I believe it was necessary. Director Cheatle had an honorable, near 30-year career serving her country, and that is not in question. But the Secret Service's motto of worthy and trust and confidence, she had lost the confidence of Congress, clearly, as we saw, and I believe she had lost the faith of the American people and the faith of the men and women of the Secret Service. It's time, as the congressmen have said, to address the failures that became evident on July 13th and fill those gaps as they may be in the field right now and help rebuild a Secret Service that can not only serve the American people that they deserve so they can faith and confidence that their government is serving them and protecting their elected leaders.
Yeah, and as that hearing yesterday, Kimberly Cheatle, as we saw, was grilled by both Republicans and Democrats, but she really had little to say in the way of details. But there was one new detail that did come out during that hearing, and that was that the Secret Service received multiple warnings about Thomas Crooks, the shooter, but was later deemed not a threat. That said, Paul, why would the Secret Service even take a chance and allow the former president to step out on that stage in the first place?
This arises from a misunderstanding of how Secret Service works and how these sites are protected. This person was identified as a person of suspicion. As we know now, obviously, he was a very dangerous potential assassin. When he was reported to the Secret Service and to local police, he was a young man with a Gulf rangefinder. There is talk that he was on the roof with the rifle, and he was reported to the Secret Service in that position for 30 minutes. From my understanding, and I was not there and I've not read official reports, this is unequivocally false. Pictures were taken of him on the ground with the rangefinder, and he was being sought. Answers need to come out. Serious questions need to be asked, and we need to know how he was able to evade law enforcement for that period of time and then appear on the roof and shoot former President Trump. But if I was the supervisor that day and I was to tell President Trump that there's an individual with a rangefinder on the site, I don't believe that would rise to the level of a threat that the former president would not take the stage. Had it been an individual with a rifle, the Secret Service never would have had former President Trump take the stage.
Yeah, and a question here, a lot of people wondering, why do you think that Director Cheatle had such a difficult time answering questions, or maybe seemingly didn't want to?
I would caution people to judge a law enforcement expert who's being grilled by some of the most powerful legislators in the world. They had closed-door briefings days before, and they likely knew the answers to the questions they were asking. I believe it was a trap. They wanted accountability. They deserved answers. And her performance was simply not acceptable. She's not a trained media expert, and she should have been more forthright, more transparent with her answers. But had she started answering some questions that provided specificity that could have revealed national security secrets or compromised an investigation, she would have then been said that she was irresponsible with the nation's secrets and not safe. She could not win that, and perhaps she should not win that. She needs to resign, and she has. I believe the Secret Service needs to look for entirely new leadership. They're facing 21st century threats, and they need a leader who can have the faith of the men and women of Secret Service, Congress, and the American people to lead them into the 21st century.
Paul, what do you think happens next, and what do you hope comes from all of this?
All I can say is I hope that the Secret Service can once again be known as the world's greatest executive protection agency in the world. They are men and women who are truly worthy of trust and confidence of the American people. And I can tell you that is not diminished. The rank and file men and women who are standing post today around the world are worthy of your faith and confidence, just as their sacrifice is worthy of our democracy, should it be needed. Men and women charged towards gunfire willingly to save someone else's life. One agent placed their head on center mass of the former president, even though it may be the location of the next bullet. I hope the Secret Service can grow. I hope it can learn from this as it has through history. And I hope that the men and women of the Secret Service know, for one, that they are trusted, and two, I hope that the men and women of local law enforcement, it's critically important that federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial police know that the Secret Service cannot exist without them. The dangerous statements made by the former director need to be corrected. There need to be meetings, because the Secret Service's 159 years of success is not built 100% of its own competence, but that of the men and women of law enforcement across this country.
Well, Paul, as always, thank you so much for your analysis, and we thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Vice President Kamala Harris campaigns in battleground state Wisconsin after locking up enough Democratic delegates to win her party's nomination. At the same time, President Joe Biden returns to the White House after recovering from COVID. He's down to the last 6 months in office for his one and only term. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, Vice President Kamala Harris traveled to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where the Republican National Convention just recently wrapped up and Donald Trump officially accepted the GOP nomination. Now, today was the vice president's first campaign rally since she launched her bid for the Oval Office with President Biden's endorsement.
At a high school outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Vice President Kamala Harris tells her supporters,
"The path to the White House goes through Wisconsin." Yes, it does.
She also discussed abortion.
We trust women to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do.
Wisconsin Republican leaders branding Harris an extreme liberal who is out of step with most voters in the swing state. Just yesterday, GOP vice presidential contender J.D. Vance with this invitation to Democrats.
My message to Democrats who are disgusted by this process, disgusted by how anti-democratic it is, you are welcome in the Republican Party, where we think we should persuade voters and not lie to voters.
The Trump campaign claims President Trump trounces Kamala Harris in every poll, and they released an ad ripping on her defense of President Joe Biden's health.
Kamala was in on it. She covered up Joe's obvious mental decline.
Our president is in good shape, in good health, tireless, vibrant.
Meanwhile, President Biden returns to the White House after spending several days at his beach home in Delaware convalescing from COVID-19. Biden will address the nation Wednesday night on his decision to drop out of the race. His top diplomat, meanwhile, who's been trying to stop wars across the globe, telling reporters,
adversaries who thought that we couldn't get our act together at home, he's demonstrated exactly the contrary to that.
Now, back to that speech tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. President Biden tweeted today that he'll address the nation from the Oval Office on what lies ahead and how he says he will finish the job for the American people. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, now to Iowa, where a law banning most abortions after 6 weeks is set to take effect on July 29th. The measure passed last year, but initially was blocked. The state Supreme Court later said that there is not a constitutional right to an abortion. And on Monday, a district court judge said the law can go into effect next week. As travel disruptions enter a fifth day, the U.S. Transportation Department opens an investigation into Delta Airlines. The delays and cancellations began after a faulty software update was blamed for a worldwide technology glitch. This is the fourth full day in which passengers are stranded, with the vast majority coming from U.S. Delta flights. Since the disruptions began, Delta has canceled more than 5,000 flights. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including Vatican visitor. Cardinal Pietro Parolin meets with the leader of Ukraine, plus new developments on why the Communist government of China is restricting access to a Catholic prayer app. Welcome back. After discussing Russia's war on Ukraine with Cardinal Pietro Parolin, President Volodymyr Zelensky called the experience a meaningful meeting.
It was a really an important visit, I think, as an expression of the closeness and proximity of the Holy Father to Ukraine. You have talked with him recently, then you know which are the feelings and which is the attitude of the Holy Father towards your country, and especially on the issue of the war.
All these steps are very important for us, and it's important that you support it. And I heard your words. I think all of us understand that we have to finish the war as soon as possible, of course, not to lose people's lives.
Earlier in his trip, Cardinal Parolin said that Pope Francis, quote, shares the pain, but above all, would like to be able to help open paths for a solution to end the war. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in the United States, his first visit since the October 7th Hamas terror attack on Israel. The main purpose of Netanyahu's trip is to give a speech to a joint meeting of Congress. In doing so, he will make history by being the first international leader to address Congress 4 times. Netanyahu also is expected to meet with President Biden on Thursday. The Israeli leader is facing criticism over his handling of the war as the Palestinian death toll nears 40,000 since October 7th. And for more, let's bring in foreign policy expert Harley Littman. Harley, good to be with you today. So what do you think the Israeli Prime Minister hopes to accomplish with his speech tomorrow?
I think he's going to thank the President of the United States and the people of the United States for supporting Israel. And he's going to remind everyone that support for Israel has always been bipartisan. I think he'll point out shared values that the United States and Israel has. And he'll probably go on to point out how he has to finish fighting Hamas and destroy them, that only that will create peace for everyone in the region. And I think he'll point out that. He'll also mention that his goal is to free the hostages and that he's close to doing it. He may remind us that he lost his own brother in a rescue during a terrorist operation. So he's sensitive to situations like this. And he may also point out that America had hostages for 444 days in Iran. We forget in around 1980 when Iran took American hostages when President Carter was president. And, and even though it feels long to a lot of people, well, this war is about to end in 9 months, given history and comparisons, it's not that long as people think it is.
Yeah, and as we know, Netanyahu is here in the U.S. at a time when the U.S. political landscape really is changing day by day. How do you think that's going to impact the prime minister and his goals while he's here?
Well, there's a lot of distraction. That's the problem. The timing for him is probably not the best right now, because we just saw a near assassination of a president, and then within about the same week or so, we have the resignation of a sitting president. Both things are quite extraordinary, and then you have a vice presidential nominee who appears to be the candidate for the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, who will not be there, but who will meet with him later. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things going on. It's a very intense time. So, and there are a good number of Democrats that said they will not listen to his speech out of protest to Israel's war in Gaza. So you have a lot of conflicting dynamics, but I think Netanyahu is going to stay focused on his main goal, which is really 3 things, and they are Iran, Iran, and Iran. And the reason why that is of the most extreme importance now is that every single American president on both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, has always said that they will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. But now Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, has just announced that Iran is within weeks of a breakout of a nuclear weapon. So given that every president and both parties have said that they will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, including the present President Biden, who is still keeping office through November, as we understand, this is a challenge. What are we going to do? He may present some solutions and some ideas. And he'll probably remind us that while Israel was attacked on October 7th, it's really an assault on the West, which is the United States. That while they go after Israel, it's easy to pick on the Jews in Israel initially. The ultimate goal is the destruction of the United States.
Well, Harley, so much more we can talk about, but we are out of time. Thank you so much for your time today and for your analysis. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, as we reported last week, a popular U.S.-based Catholic app has been removed in China. The founder of Hallow says the communist government removed the prayer app from Apple's online store. The CCP says Hallow featured, quote, illegal content. Since launching in 2018, Hallow says its app has been downloaded more than 20 million times across 150-plus countries. We recently caught up with the CEO of Hallow. And for more, we turn to Alex Jones, the founder of the Hallow prayer app. Alex, great to be with you again. So how did you find out that Hallow is no longer available in China? And is there anything that can be done to restore it there?
Yeah, so it was last week. We had just launched a challenge on St. John Paul II, actually. Jim Caviezel was reading a bunch of his letters and homilies. It's a really beautiful challenge. It's still ongoing, which admittedly goes pretty in depth into St. John Paul II's work on defeating and combating communism during his life. And shortly after we launched that challenge, we got an email from Apple that said that the Cyberspace Administration of China had deemed content on the app to be illegal and had forced them to remove it from the app stores. You know, if there's anything to restore it, we don't know a ton about the Cyberspace Administration of China's processes, but I'm not infinitely hopeful about some sort of appeals process. You know, for us, we have kind of a web application that people can still access through a website and a VPN. I think, though, our biggest tool right now is prayers for our brothers and sisters in Christ in China.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you heard about this, what was your reaction?
Yeah, it was mostly sadness. You know, we have many thousands of people on the app in China. We don't have perfect numbers, but several thousand, and it's only available in English in China right now. We don't have it in Chinese. We have 7 or 8 languages, but we're still working on Chinese. So mostly sadness, but I think we also, in the West, we get lulled into this world, which, it often feels like a fight, but, a political world and a legal world that's at least open to Christianity. And, the truth is that's just not the case globally. And there's many places where Christianity is, where governments are outright hostile to Christianity. And so, it's kind of eye-opening to, the work that the church has to do globally, and a lot of the work that St. John Paul II did, but that still needs to continue today.
Yeah. Do you happen to know, what happens to the people in China who have already downloaded it?
Yeah, so I don't think they can physically remove it from the devices, so they just can't update it anymore. It's been removed from the App Store, and so we just have to make sure that the old version of the app continues to stay working as we continue to update it. And then people can also, new folks in China can also hopefully access the website through some sort of VPN or something. But the app itself, they won't be able to download from the app stores, unfortunately.
Alex, is this the first time that something like this has happened, or has this happened in other countries as well?
No, this is our first experience with this, which, we just crossed 20 million downloads by the grace of God and are larger than we ever thought this app would be. And so, it makes sense that we'd start to face some hostility globally, but this is the first time that it's happened.
Yeah, and I want to end on a high note. You mentioned a lot of successes with Hallow. Tell us a little bit more about that overall.
Yeah, had you told me that 200 people would be using Hallow a few years ago, I would have said you were crazy. But we just crossed 20 million downloads. Glory to God. It's been an incredible journey. The thing for us is we just get to reach out and journey with folks across all age groups, across all demographics, many different countries, and journey with them deeper in a relationship with Christ. We have folks who have fallen away from their faith for 20, 30 years who haven't prayed, but people also who are praying every day and just face a sense of loneliness and want a friend to pray with. And, it's been a blessing for us both to journey deeper spiritually ourselves, but also to get to pray with folks around the world.
Yeah, and it's been a blessing to everyone as well. Thank you so much, Alex, for coming on. Thank you for the work that you do. We appreciate it. God bless.
Glory to God. Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, out of sight. The St. John Paul II National Shrine in Washington, D.C. is taking action, and we have the latest. Plus, from Rome, a nonprofit that wants to revive Christian culture through truth and beauty. An important update on an EWTN exclusive on the artwork of accused abuser Father Marco Rupnik. The temporary paper cover of the sprawling mosaics in the chapel at the St. John Paul II National Shrine is now up. It will remain there until it can be switched out with fabric that is appropriate for worship spaces. Officials there are saying they're trying to do that as soon as possible. In his only TV interview on the subject, Supreme Knight Patrick Kelly explained to our own Monse Alvarado the decision by the Knights of Columbus was made at the end of a comprehensive confidential review process. A diocese in Nicaragua recently held its first ordinations since the exile of Bishop Rolando Alvarez. One priest and 7 deacons were ordained on Saturday in the Matagalpa Cathedral. In 2023, Bishop Alvarez was charged with being a traitor to the homeland and sentenced to 26 years in prison. He was later released and is now living in exile in Rome. Well, you have likely heard the expression, all roads lead to Rome, and tonight, that is where our final story takes us. While a visit to Rome is truly a unique experience, one program aims to offer Christians something even more extraordinary. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Andreas Tannhauser introduces us to the Truth and Beauty Project.
We all know Rome wasn't built in a day. Its history spans more than 3,000 years. The Eternal City is famous for its architecture, its culture, and its religion. Hundreds of popes, saints, and clergy have called this place home. It is the cradle of Christendom. The Truth and Beauty Project aims to highlight these qualities.
Well, the idea behind the Truth and Beauty Project was that we realized that there wasn't this comprehensive program where one could truly understand their Christian identity from all different aspects, that brings together all different aspects of not only knowledge, but also practical living, how to live it out in a world that is presenting happiness and beauty in a very different light from what the true Christian story is all about.
Founded 7 years ago, the Catholic nonprofit sees themselves as a school of Christian living, using experiences, encounters, and education. The goal of the Truth and Beauty Project is to instill people with a greater Christian faith and understanding of human dignity. They hope this will empower those who visit Rome to share what they've learned with others.
So Rome is the place from which Christianity spread to the ends of the earth. And it's such a beautiful thing to bring people here to the heart, where they can plant their roots, so they can understand who they are all the more clearly, so that they can then take that and with that strong foundation, spread this love to the ends of the earth.
The project offers week-long immersions in Rome, during which the participants get to experience the city's sacred art, architecture, and liturgies. Through tours, discussions, and prayer, the project weaves together not only theology and philosophy, but also Roman history and church history.
You walk a few streets ahead and then you see also places where there were pagan temples or pagan parts of the city, like the Pantheon, that are then being Christianized and now are beautiful churches. And so I think we have like the heart of Europe, basically, the heart of Christian Europe we will see here. So if you come with an open heart and open mind for that Christian history or that Christian culture, then you, I think only then you can experience Rome to its fullest extent.
As many saints have said before, the experience of seeing beauty in art and architecture can convey timeless truths and be deeply transformative. The Truth and Beauty Project hopes to teach its participants how they can uplift the culture of their community, nation, and world by integrating truth and beauty in every aspect of life. In Rome, Andreas Tonhauser, EWTN News Nightly.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.